Hi guys, welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. I finally created one. Only took me, a few years. For those of you that don't know, my name is Katy. I'm a motorsport journalist, and this YouTube channel is going to be just a casual place where I upload some videos on different topics in motorsport, and also interview some of my nearest and dearest friends from the world of F1 and beyond about their careers in Small Talk podcast, which is something that I originally did a few years ago. I only did 2 episodes of, which is a story for another time, but I'm bringing it back for 2021, and I'm going to be talking to people from the world of journalism, PR, fitness, all sorts of things. So be sure to subscribe and keep your eyes out for videos like that. However, in today's video, my very first video, I wanted to do a video about starting your own motorsport blog, because at the end of the day, that's why I'm here. Because back in 2013, I was bored over the summer holidays. I was doing my A-levels at school, and I thought, what can I do apart from going out and seeing friends during the day? So one of my friends, she said, I've just created a blog writing about beauty, makeup, things like that. And although, that kind of stuff interests me, that's not where my passion lies. I've always loved Formula One. I've grown up with it. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to give that a try. So I went and I set up this blog, had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have an interest in writing. I didn't really see myself ever as being a journalist, being a writer. In fact, I wanted to be a teacher. But like I said, I was bored. I love Formula One. It was a Formula One off season, so I created this blog. And now today, I'm an editor at one of the biggest F1 sites there is, WTF1, if you have come here from that, which I'm sure probably lots of you have. So quite the glow up. But I wanted today to talk about getting started, planning content, and how to promote your blog, because they're all things that I've had to do and learn myself. And I just thought it'd be a nice idea to sit down and do a bit more of a chatty video talking about what to do. So I put out a couple of posts on social media as well, asking for your questions, and I've embedded those into this sort of video plan. So let's just dive right into it. Now, for those of you watching, I'm sure there's probably going to be some of you that want to start a new blog. Maybe it's the beginning of the new year, it's a New Year's resolution that you want to get into motorsport journalism or create a blog. And I'm sure there are also going to be some of you that maybe have an existing blog that maybe you've neglected a little bit, or you just want to spend more time on in 2021. So I'm going to try and split this video into those of you that are just starting and those of you that have already got a blog. So bear with me. Right. If you're new and this is all alien to you, the first thing you need to do, and it sounds quite simple, but you need to make a blog. So there are lots of different host platforms that you can use. My very first blog that I created back in 2013 was with Blogger. I think it was called Blogspot at the time, I'm not sure. But that is powered by Google. So if you already have a Google account, you can just set one up from there and link it to your email, and it's really nice and easy. Other options are WordPress, which is what I have my current blog on now, and this isn't sponsored in any way, but for me, WordPress is perfect. I wouldn't change anything about it. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to move to any other platform in the near future. WordPress is the one for me. But like I say, it might be different for you. Other options out there are things like Squarespace. I know quite a lot of people have had experiences with that, and also Wix. Choose whichever one you want to use. I'd suggest maybe looking on YouTube at people's honest opinions of them. If maybe you've used WordPress in the past and you weren't fond of it, then have a look online, see what other people are saying about Blogger, Squarespace, Wix, whatever, and just pick a platform that you think is going to be the most convenient for you. The next step is selecting a domain name and a brand name. So the one thing I would say about this is do not use the word F1 in your blog, which I know you might be thinking, okay, that's fine, but my whole blog is about F1. Then that's fine. But F1, as well as being a sport and the thing that we all mutually love, is also a registered trademark. So what you don't want to be doing is, saying that you are in any way associated to F1 When you're not, that is when things can get pretty risky, let's just say. I know, speaking from experience of other content creators here on YouTube, they've called themselves, for example, Tomo F1. For me, Tomo, elite YouTuber, maybe the best F1 YouTuber out there, but that's, like I said, it's just my opinion. He went along as Tomo F1 for most of 2020. And then over the last few months, he's changed and just referred to himself as Tomo. And that's fine because he has enough of a following that people are still, they're not going to get confused, especially as his branding has been so on point throughout 2020. By losing the F1 side of his name, people aren't going to suddenly think that he's vanished off the face of the earth because his name has changed. Look at the top sites such as The Race, Autosport, Motorsport.com, Crash, Racer. None of them include the words F1 in their web domain, in their branding, and that is because they're not a part of F1. They're a site that writes about F1, but they're not in any way related to it. Looking at sites that are related to F1, you have F1 Authentics, F1 Experiences. So what you don't want to do is get an email through from F1 saying, listen here, little blog, you're using F1 in your name and you're not allowed to, and if you don't change it within 30 days, we're going to take you to court. That's not what you want as a little tiny blog. You don't need that stress, so I'm telling you now, avoid using the words F1. There are plenty of alternatives that you can use, you know, Grand Prix, GP, racing, motorsport. My very first blog that I created was called, and this is very embarrassing for me to publicly admit because probably lots of you are now going to go and try and find it, so don't do that. But my very first blog was called Formula Fairman, Formula being relating to Formula 1, you know, F1, F2 and F3 weren't a thing back then. It was GP2 and GP3, but there were other things like Formula Renault and such. So the word Formula had a link to motorsport, and Fairman is my surname. So that was fairly easy. So you've got your domain name, you might have done some branding to do with your name, and you've got your web platform. Now is creating an appealing website. Personal opinion, personal take, I quite like simplistic websites. They're really easy to design. You haven't got a million things going on. You're not going to lose your viewer to random ads or widgets and stuff popping up from the side. It's going to just keep the focus on your content and your writing, which is what you want people to do. You can use things like CSS, which is like the customization section of the website, you know, behind the scenes. For example, you might want to change the color of certain blocks or widgets on your website. You can do that through the CSS. Also, one of the key points, make sure your website looks good on mobile. I'd say probably about 80 or 70 to 80% of stuff on other sites that I work with, their audience comes from mobile. Whether you're on the go, I know it's not happening so much with a global pandemic. You might be looking through your phone on your journey to work, on the bus, on the train, or whatever. Mobile is probably going to be the way that we absorb most of our content now. So keep that in mind when you're designing it, especially if you're using social media to promote it as well. So you have your beautiful new website, but now let's talk about the kind of content you're going to put on that website. I got quite a lot of questions, similar questions, when I asked on social media if people wanted to know any certain things. I'll try my best to pronounce people's social media handles correctly, but this is a forward warning that I'm not the greatest at that. What can I write on my website? The simple answer is you can write whatever you want. If you wake up one morning and suddenly think, do you know what? I think Nicholas Latifi is the greatest driver of all time. Get up, go to your website, write it up, and put it out there. People might not share the same opinion as you, but I often find that sometimes controversial things that you write gain more interest because, you know, most people probably wake up and think, sorry, Nicholas Latifi is the greatest ever? Surely, what reasons have that person got for making that argument? And they'll click to your work. As long as you haven't just made that your headline and then not backed it up at all in your article, more often than not, it's going to be a fine thing to write. Having a blog as well also means that you have freedom. You haven't got an editor leaning over you saying, I want you to write an 1,800 word piece on, I don't know, Marlborough in Formula 1, and you have 24 hours to do it. Go. You can do whatever you want, you can write whatever you want, and you can publish it whenever you want. And that freedom is something that I think when you have a blog, you take it for granted. So Jay Gohain19, really, I hope I haven't mullered that, but on Instagram said, what themes are important to blog about and what topics are there to avoid? Personally, I don't think there are any rules. You know, if you wanted to set yourself a challenge, you could maybe say, I want to write one feature a month and I want to do an interview every quarter, and that's the kind of content that I want on my blog, and that's absolutely fine. I don't think there are many topics that you shouldn't cover. I mean, naturally with motorsport, it's a dangerous sport. There's always things like risk involved. If you're going to be writing about that, I think you can write about it, but just tackle the subject with sensitivity. But there are so many topics you can cover in Formula One. You could cover the racing itself, you can cover the people in Formula One, you can cover the locations that Formula One travels to. Formula One also has a 70-year history. You can take a look back at maybe the 1950s in Formula One, or the 70s, or the 90s. There's so many little different niche pockets that you can look into. Do what you want with it. Mr. Alphonsilis on Twitter. I'm really sorry. I'm going to apologise after every single pronunciation of social media handles, but hey ho. When you choose your next topic, do you choose what interests you most, or do you choose a topic that could be relevant in the next few days or weeks? Great question. So I would say mix it up so you can reach different audiences. I mean, if you wanted to become a blog that's very much reacting to every single thing that happens and news that breaks, then that's fine, you can do that. Or if you want to be a blog that creates more evergreen content, then that's also fine too. But for me personally, I would suggest maybe mixing it up. You could write something timely, like why Lewis Hamilton should be knighted. Lewis Hamilton has recently been knighted here in the UK. He's been given this New Year's honours. You could write a blog about why that's a good thing. Or you could maybe write something as to why you should go and watch the British touring cars race at Knock Hill at the weekend. You know, you can write whatever you want. But then you could also do something like the best 8 Formula One cars ever, or why racing around Abu Dhabi is so boring. An example of one that I've come up with is back in 2015 on my blog, I did an article about Pascal Wehrlein saying, you know, who is this new kid that's appeared? He did some testing for Force India, and he had this early relationship building with Mercedes as a junior. So I did a blog about him, about his time growing up, and basically said, this is a kid, he's going to be a star of the future. Read this blog now to find out all about him. And that got a lot of interest at the time. But then also, as Pascal, you know, he won the DTM championship that year, and he became the youngest to do so. And that content didn't really age badly because I'd written about his upbringing, and I had put together loads of different sources on the internet and put it all into one place because I couldn't find anything similar. And although the blog that I wrote that on I've since deactivated, so annoyingly I can't go and find it. I've got all the tweets promoting it, which is fine, until I deactivated the account. It was a really successful blog, and it would continuously tick over in views, and that's the kind of thing that you want. Now, this isn't something that I actually had scheduled to talk about in this video, but I will quickly mention it now. With your blog, I would try and avoid to report on things like breaking news stories and race reports to an extent, mainly because your typical F1 fan, I hate to break it to you, is probably not going to go to, you know, your blog to read about, I don't know, Carlos Sainz signing for Ferrari. They're more likely to get that information from Motorsport or The Race or BBC. Same with race reports. If I'm wanting to read a race report, then I will probably go to those sites rather than hunt one down from an independent blog. I'm not saying it's not good to practice your race reports, but don't put all of your energy into writing race reports and then get disappointed when it gets minimal views. Instead, maybe let's go back to Carlos Sainz signing for Ferrari. Do a blog about that, you know. Don't necessarily write up the news as a breaking news story, but instead put something out there like why Carlos Sainz signing for Ferrari is the biggest mistake in his career. Something like that is interesting and makes me want to click it. That's what's going to get you the attention rather than you writing a 300-word, you know, breaking news story. That's my opinion on that. Another point in terms of the content that you're making, make sure that you're interested in it. I think you can definitely tell when somebody has written something and it's maybe about a topic that they haven't researched well enough or they just don't care about. If you're a blog writing about Formula One sponsorship in the 1970s, and then you're going to put something out there about current Formula One hydraulic systems, and you don't know much about it and you haven't researched it quite well enough, then that's probably going to come across in your writing. So I would say make sure that you're interested in what you're writing about. Also, it makes it much more enjoyable to write about things like that, is if you can just sit down at a computer or a laptop, you've got all your sources around you, and you can just pull from that and weave together a really nice article. That's much more enjoyable than having to stress out because you don't know what you're writing about. Zakins. I don't know how to pronounce these. So, Zakson1234. Once again, apologies. Should you stick to one writing style or structure, or can you change it based on a topic, for example? Same kind of thing. Your blog, your rules. It's great practice to experiment, but I think you need to be careful that you're not writing stuff that's sticking so much to a style guide that the content becomes quite robotic and quite dry and quite boring. One of the things I love about my blog that I'll be honest, I don't put as much out on it as I should do and I used to, because now I'm working full time in motorsport journalism. I don't really have the time I'd like to dedicate to my blog, and especially now I'm starting this YouTube channel, is probably going to be a little bit neglected. But one of the things that I loved about my blog when I used it, the most, was that I had the fluidity and no real rules as to how I could write or what rules I had to follow when writing. I think it's important to know how to structure a race report, a news story. Just make sure you have fun with it. One of the reasons that WTF1 approached me and, liked what I did, because I worked as a freelancer with them before I got the full-time role, is they had seen what I'd written on my blog and they liked the style that I had. I liked that it was quite personable and cheeky and different to what you would see on something like the BBC. So I think it's important that you don't allow yourself to have your creativity suppressed by having to tick every little style guide box. And yeah, just try and make what you're writing flow nicely. Also, using tools like Grammarly is really, helpful to me in the past and in the present. For those of you who don't know, Grammarly is a tool that you can download. I think there's a free version. You can have it as an extension, like a plugin kind of thing on your website browser of choice. You can tell I don't really know what I'm talking about. Or you can just use it as a desktop feature. But basically you just chuck your work into it and it will pick up certain grammatical errors and things like that. Really handy, really good tool. The next thing is creating a content plan. This is something I had loads of questions about, and I'd probably like to do like a whole nother video on this. Basically, the tips I would have for that: schedule content around your availability. If you're working a 9 to 5 job, Monday to Friday, and then come the weekend, you've got the Formula One on and you want to make sure you watch all of the practice, catch up on that, watch the qualifying, watch the race, watch the before and the after chatty bits. And then, every Saturday you play rugby in the morning and you go and see a movie with your friends in the evening. You're not going to have the time to dedicate to writing 5 blogs a week. It's not going to happen. And all that's going to happen is if you try and set yourself those rules, you're just going to get tired, you're going to get worn out, burnt out, and you're just going to be ended up disappointed because you've only managed to write 2 things out of the 5 things that you'd hope to do that week. Also, don't feel you have to stick to F1. Yes, that's probably the thing that most of us have in common, is that we love Formula One, but also don't be afraid to look into other championships. On my blog, I've written about things like the World Rally Championship, what was GP2, Formula 2 now, MotoGP, British touring cars, GT racing. I've covered lots of it. And sometimes in covering those other motorsport championships, you will open yourself up to a whole nother audience that will still keep coming back to your site. So I think don't feel that you have to stick to one championship on your site as well. At Too Much Racing on Twitter asked, do you have any tips for staying motivated if you're busy and tired from the day job and other things? Mine stalled a while ago. Totally relate to that. I, up until October last year, had a full-time job in digital marketing, and I would balance my motorsport blog and my writing and my freelance work alongside it. And when I tell you that I had several mini breakdowns because I was just exhausting myself, putting too much pressure on myself, trying to have a side hustle is fine, but I think managing it time-wise is very important, otherwise you will just burn out. So keep it realistic. Also, writing about content that you love. I know we've sort of mentioned it before, but sometimes it can be a lot easier to write and find that motivation to write about something if you're actually interested in it. Learn to rest, not quit, which I'm sure is a quote that I've seen everywhere, all over Pinterest and Instagram like that, but it is very true. Don't just throw it all away. I've had moments where, I'm trying to think when it was, probably like 2016, and when I tell you I had a full-on breakdown, I'm not kidding. Like, I sat in my room and I was in hysterics, crying, because I just thought, what's the point? I'm spending all of my time, all of my money, traveling to these races, and nothing is happening. And then do you know what happened? Probably, I don't know, a month later, somebody messaged me and said, Sauber F1 team have just shared your blog on Reddit. And I was like, sorry? On Reddit? And he was like, yep, sent me the screenshot. And sure enough, Sauber F1 team had joined Reddit, and their first post that they ever did is they shared my blog and said, Katy's work, I think they said Katy's work is mesmerising. She's one of our favourite bloggers. Share links to your favourite motorsport bloggers in the comments below, or however Reddit works, I don't know. And my website blew up, and like, that was such a huge defining moment for me, in that I was full on ready to quit like a month beforehand, and it was in December, and I was like, you know what, I'll just take time off over Christmas and I'll revisit it all in the new year. And then I think it was literally like the 1st or 2nd of January, Reddit, my Sauber shared my blog on Reddit, and it blew up. And yeah, I think it's important to not just throw it all away. Have faith. Also, always know that there's room for improvement, and keep a desire going to always learn new things, whether that's in terms of writing or learning new things about Formula One. There are so many topics, like I said, that you can cover in Formula One. And if you're a fan like I am, I'm always wanting to know about new nuggets of information and research different things. There are so many incredible books out there that you can pick up. Have a flick through them, and if there's something in there that takes your interest, make a note of it. Get a notebook. I've got a notebook which is now chock-a-block of ideas of when I've been writing about certain topics, and then I've seen something whilst researching and I thought, actually, that would make a really interesting topic to look into for a blog, and I've written it down. Do the same. Get yourself a nice little notebook and make notes on future content ideas. Something which is also really important in promoting your work is using things like visual content, such as images. It's going to get more people's attention if you use a nice image, putting it out on social media. Becky.love on Instagram asks, what is the best way to source images? First rule, and something that I'm guilty of when I first started blogging, do not steal images off of Google. That is very bad. You're breaking lots of rules, lots of laws. Don't do it. Many places have been able to use images like that because they pay for a license, whether that's through XPB or Getty or Motorsport Images. They pay a lot of money, so photographers can attend those races and take those pictures. Camera equipment is so expensive. Traveling and staying in hotels, flights, everything like that costs a lot. Don't then just think, I need a picture of Sebastian Vettel for my article. Type in Sebastian Vettel into Google, nab the first one and chuck that in your article. It's not okay. Don't do it. But you might think, well then how am I meant to put images into my work? That's fine. You can reach out to teams, sign up to mailing lists. Most of the time, if you're writing about certain things and a team might email you about a new sponsorship deal, they'll include images that you can use in that email. You know, they might be drivers, there might be pictures of the car. If you do use images from, say, the Formula E media site, be sure to credit them on your blog. It's just a good thing, a good habit to get into. Also, if you're gonna use certain tweets or Instagram posts from maybe drivers or teams, just embed them as well. It's really easy to do. Just copy and paste the link of the post, and you probably won't get into trouble for embedding a tweet. You can also create your own visuals as well using things like Canva or Photoshop, which if you're interested in, I can also do another video on something like that. Night Wish, but the S in Wish is a 5 on Twitter, said, is there any practical advice for those starting out and struggling to find motivation for 10 to 20 followers besides the old, you gotta just keep pushing, or is it really that simple? So firstly, when starting out, I would say don't worry too much about numbers. I've had several moments when I thought people don't care and wanting to quit, and it can be demoralizing, but I think just try not to focus on the numbers too much, which I know is a difficult thing to do. We all want to have a blog that's visited by, hundreds, if not thousands of people every day, but unfortunately that's just not the reality. Maybe look at expanding your coverage, or maybe even go the opposite way and finding a niche. I talked earlier about maybe having a blog about 1970s Formula One sponsorship. It might sound really niche, but in doing so, you might find that audience that are looking for that exact kind of content. I know saying it out loud, people might think, is that really something that people are interested in? But I promise you there is probably an audience for that somewhere. There are things that you can also try to do to help boost your social media presence and build an audience. Having a social media presence is so important, and I 100% would not be here today if it wasn't for really promoting my work well on social media, which takes us on nicely to the next thing. So I'm very aware that the sun is now setting, so if the lighting is messing up, I'm sorry about that. Also, I didn't realize how long I've been recording for. My God, I can go on for ages. So the final section to this video is about social media and promotion. Firstly, promoting your work. There are 2 ways that you can promote your work. This is on social media. So you can share it using a social card, which I will insert a picture graphic in here of what a social card looks like. I know you can 100% do this through things like WordPress. I'm not sure if other sites offer the same, but for me personally, I just think the social card looks more professional. It looks a bit more well-rounded, and like if you click that, you're going to be going to a nice, reliable site, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's some sort of psychology in my mind that thinks that the social card just looks more professional. But there is also another way that you can share your work, and that is sharing a relevant image with your article and then tagging people in that image to get their attention. So I'm not saying you should go on a mad tagging spree and tag everyone you can, because, well, firstly, there's a limit, I think, to 10 on Twitter. But also what you don't want to do is keep tagging the same people, like, I don't know, Natalie Pinkham. Your article might not be related to Natalie Pinkham, but you might want Natalie Pinkham to see it and to share it or something like that. I would avoid doing techniques like that, because Natalie Pinkham is probably going to get tired of your constant tagging her in posts after, the first 3. She could even get to the point where she'll block you, and that's definitely not what you want. But share the relevant image and tag relevant accounts. If you've written something about Envision Virgin Racing, which is a Formula E team, you might say, why season 7 is going to be their best season yet. In doing so, maybe tag sponsors of Envision Virgin Racing, because they're paying a lot of money, and if they think, off the top of my head, I think Stanley, which is a supplier of like DIY tools and all that kind of stuff, they're paying to be on that car. And if you tag Stanley Tools UK or something on Twitter, they might see that and think, oh, we're paying a lot of money to be on that car, and it looks like it's going to be a successful year, and so they might share it. They might not, they might. It's worth a shot. Be creative, but don't be silly and just tag irrelevant people in the content. When promoting on social media, use hashtags. Avoid using hashtags like hashtag Monday Motivation or Wednesday Wisdom, because that is going to get completely lost in the hashtag. But instead think more niche. So that, Envision Virgin Racing article that we've theoretically created, use hashtags like ABB Formula E, which is the official hashtag of Formula E, but quite a lot of people don't tend to use it. They'll normally just use hashtag FE or hashtag Formula E. Think more niche. Things like hashtag electric motorsport or hashtag electric vehicle. Be clever with your hashtags, basically. Another important point is to engage with people using similar hashtags. So if you're using hashtag electric motorsport and there are, 40 people that have used that similar hashtag in their tweets over the last 2 weeks, go through, like the tweets, engage with them. they will get a notification that pops up that says, you know, Katy Fairman has liked your tweet. And they might think, who's Katy Fairman? I don't know Katy Fairman. And they will click onto your profile, hopefully, and they'll say, oh, Katy Fairman, she's a Formula E journalist, and I really like electric motorsport, which is why I've used that hashtag. I'm going to follow her, or I'm going to click on her blog and see what she writes about. Which takes us on to the next point, which is make sure your bio on your social media tells us what you do. If you're a content creator, let us know. If you're an aspiring motorsport journalist, let us know. It's important to show personality in your Twitter bio, and if you want to write that, you know, you are a massive F1 fan and you have 4 cats and you support West Ham Football Club and have been to the British Grand Prix 8 times, that's great. But if you don't tell me in that you also create content, how am I going to know? I'm not. You could put a link to it in your bio, but that doesn't come up when you sort of hover over a person's account. It only shows me that short little bio about who you are. Tell us that you create content. Let us know. Maybe be cheeky with it. Say that this is home of your new favourite motorsport blog. You know, be creative. On to social media itself. Not everything you post on your social media channel has to be about your blog. Keep in mind that you are representing your blog and your brand at all times. Also, something that I had a thought about before filming this video is people take screenshots of stuff. People keep receipts. You might think, I tweeted about something in 2016. Who is going to keep a screenshot on their phone about what I said in 2016? But with things like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, keeping screenshots and keeping shared content between you and maybe a friend on there, people will be able to go back and find that, you know, so-and-so might have tweeted something controversial and I could screenshot that, send it to my friend and be like, oh my goodness, did you see what John Smith tweeted? I can't believe they've said that. That screenshot will then stay in that chat forever. As I say, those receipts can be brought to people's attention at any time. So just be mindful that things on the internet normally do stay on there, even if you delete the tweets afterwards. So I think that covers most of what I wanted to talk about today. I'm well aware this video has been much longer than I anticipated. And I also have questions from people that I haven't had a chance to answer. So what I might do is I'm going to end this video here, and I am going to maybe do a similar video in a couple of months' time, or maybe a couple of weeks' time about, you know, content creating and planning content and stuff like that, because I said I wanted to mention that in another video. But for now, if you enjoyed this, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe. Can you tell I'm a newbie to all of this? I think there's like a notification bell that you can click on and it alerts you when I publish a new video. But for now, thank you so much for sticking through this. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments box and I'll try my best to answer them or answer them in a future video. The next video that I'm actually going to be releasing is part of the Small Talk podcast, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So I'm bringing that back, and basically I'm going to be having a long chat with one of my nearest and dearest friends, Rob Watts. I will leave his social media handles here. He is a motorsport journalist like I am, and we're going to be answering some of your questions and talking about what it takes to be a motorsport journalist, how he started out, what he does in his daily jobs, all that kind of stuff. So if that sounds like something that interests you, then make sure you have subscribed to this channel. But for now, I am going to wrap this up because it's going to be blimmin' midnight by the time I've finished. And I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.